If you had 10 seconds to do the pitch, what would you say?
So Appear Here is essentially like Airbnb for retail. And we've got about 20,000 brands that use us to find space. And on the other side, we've got hundreds of landlords that list their spaces across London and Paris so that anyone with an idea can find space to bring it to life as easily as booking a hotel room.
So can we go back to the way you started the story about Happier Here? So how did it happen? What gave you the idea?
So I think it's always interesting that when you look back, I think it's far easier to connect the dots. But I don't think there was ever a moment where I suddenly went, this is what I'm doing. But I'd had the idea for Appear Here, and I think that was from looking at lots of empty shops, seeing businesses like Airbnb, and lots of different little inspirations had like led to this idea. And then I sort of had it in the back of my mind, and I didn't act upon it. And then in the summer of 2012, I launched a pop-up store for the Queen's Diamond Jubilee.
So can you explain this for the people who don't live in the UK?
Yeah, so obviously in the UK we have a monarchy, and the Queen is like one of the longest reigning queens ever. And to celebrate this, they have a big public holiday. So everyone had a couple of days off work. And when they did this, I found a little store off of Carnaby Street, right in the centre of London, in this very sort of cool area. And I launched a store to celebrate her jubilee and to really make the most of this national moment. And within a few days of launching it, long story short, the T-shirts got banned by Buckingham Palace. It was a little bit of a controversial deal, but it made the shop even more popular. And I realized from a personal point of view, one, how much I enjoyed launching the store. Two, how difficult it was to find the store. And three, I had set up an online website selling these T-shirts for the Queen's Diamond Jubilee, but they were making so much more money and selling so much more in the store. So I guess in my own mind, I realized that actually there's still a reason to have physical retail. So I guess finding the space being difficult, enjoying it, and then like convincing myself that this made sense, made me believe in the idea more. And then a few days later, I got a call from a big US sportswear brand. I mean, like a multi-billion-pound company. And they're calling like some 19-year-old kid's mobile number. And they were saying to me, could you help us find a shop for the Olympics, which was taking part in London a few weeks later. Anyway, long story short, I guess I've enjoyed this was difficult, and I'm a young guy who's just got an idea, and I could have used this solution. And on the flip side, I'm on the phone to a multi-billion-pound sportswear company in the US who are so desperate that they're calling up my mobile number that I'm going, they could use it as well. And it was after that whole sort of experience that I decided to sort of focus and commit to making Appear Here happen.
Why is it hard to rent a space? I mean, you have to provide 6 months money in advance, So how did you tackle this thing?
So I guess going back to the problem, the year I was born, the average lease was 20 years. Today, it's under 5 years. And if you think about it, that's a fundamental shift and change. Yet the way people rent space has not changed. So I guess what was exciting is, one, spotting this problem. But the funny thing was meeting landlords and them still acting as if this reality wasn't true. They still want to believe that actually the old way is what's actually happening. And even though in front of them everything has changed, they sort of don't want to admit to it. And that's difficult to convince people. But at the same time, I've always found it exciting. It's like, if you're going out and you're doing something and you're making a decision to change something, then you sort of want to be hit by obstacles, because those obstacles show you that that's the reason why somebody hasn't made this work before, and that's the reason why you've got to be super smart or super creative to find a way around that obstacle. And personally, when sort of I hit obstacles, I get energized because it means that I'm moving. You know, if I decide to sit here on this sofa and do nothing, nothing's going to get in my way. But the moment I decide to stand up and walk out that door, there's a chair in my way, a cushion, whatever it might be. There's going to be things that stop you. So hitting an obstacle gets me excited, and hitting an obstacle makes me push myself to be creative, to come up with a way to get around it.
Yeah. So what was the first obstacle for you that was the biggest one to overcome?
Do you know what? I don't remember the biggest, but I'll tell you a funny story. I remember the guys had just invested in me, and I didn't have a team, so it was just me on my own. And they gave, imagine they've got this young guy, they've given him a few £100,000. And I remember having my first meeting with them, and they sort of said, well, what have you spent the money on so far? And I'd gone out, and remember, I'm building a technology company for real estate, and I'd gone out and spent a huge amount of the money on editors, photographers, and copywriters. And they're like, what the hell are you doing? But I'd had a meeting with a few landlords right at the beginning, and they'd sort of said, we don't want to do this. And I'd sort of been like, well, why? And they said, well, to us it comes across like we're desperate. If we've got empty spaces and we're publicizing it, it makes us look bad. And that was ultimately an obstacle. And they said, we won't list the spaces with pricing, and we won't do this, and we won't do that, and we won't do whatever. And a lot of people, and even friends who'd come to those meetings with me, sort of said, well, maybe we shouldn't be doing this, or maybe we should do it a different way. But what I was doing is looking into, why do they feel that way? What's the emotion? Why do they feel desperate? And by going away and getting all these photographers and these editors, what I did is I got them to write about the very best streets in London. And we've done the same in Paris. But then suddenly what happened is the landlord who wanted to be a part of a pier here wasn't looking like they had a load of empty spaces. They sort of had to be on a pier here because otherwise they weren't the cool street. So by doing all the editorial, we'd sort of created a guide about the very best spaces, and a pier here had gone from being perceived, when you explain the idea, as a site that was about empty shops, to suddenly being a site that was about appearing in the very best streets in the world. And I think that example of just the solution not being obvious, but looking into the emotion and what drives someone to think the way that they think, had helped to overcome that and sign some of the first big landlords. Stores that were about convenience, when you think about shops that pack their product as high as possible and try and focus you on the sale as quickly as possible, those stores have died or are dying. And actually it's more convenient for me to go on Amazon and buy nappies or whatever it might be. And, that was never an enjoyable experience. But if I said to you a couple of years ago, you could press a button and a car will arrive outside, you'd be excited. If I said to you, you could press a button and, if you've just had children or something like that and you have to go and buy nappies like twice a day, you can press a couple of buttons online and the nappies are going to arrive at your house. That would make your life easier. If I said to you, the street you love to shop on, well, you don't need to go there anymore. You'd probably be a little bit upset. And my belief is that people can buy more and more every year, and there's more things to buy, and people have more money than ever before. But what they can't buy is experiences. And what Appear Here does is it allows people to appear in unexpected locations, create a storm, and disappear before people get bored. And it allows people like you and me, the customer walking down the street, to experience these new stories, to have the kudos of discovering things for themselves, but ultimately to touch beautiful product, drink great coffee, be surrounded by amazing people, and ultimately create moments. And when you can buy more than ever before, the real commodity is moments, and people today want to curate their lives. And I think that it's exciting that what we're doing makes streets and cities more interesting, more relevant, and allows people to find and discover things which they wouldn't have been able to do previously.
Being so young, growing so fast, having to manage a team of 40 people, how do you feel as a CEO, as a leader? I guess you doubt some days, of course, you're human. And how do you manage to focus on your role of being a CEO, what it is to be a CEO according to you?
So, to me, I think I think a CEO is about listening to what everyone has to say as much as you can. I think in a startup as well, you've got to move quickly. So that can also be, sometimes you just have to if you feel that something's right, just go for it. But what I try and do is listen to a lot of opinions. I think I'm young and naive enough to realize that I don't know anything, obviously, and that therefore I've got to learn from other people. And what I do is I listen to everyone's advice or their thoughts or where they want to go, whether that's my team internally or externally. And I sort of use them like a compass. And then after that, I'll decide where north is. And I think that once I've decided, I'll have the confidence to go for it. And also the balls to accept that if it fails and it goes wrong, it was better that we made a decision and went for it than just
compromise or
thought about it for too much. I think that's one thing. And I think the other learning as being a CEO is how difficult people are. You know, it's amazing. The best thing is finding great people. And the best thing is having so many passionate people from different experiences working towards a common goal. That's sort of what gets you up in the morning and gets you excited. Though, at the same time, I don't think that I would have imagined before I set up a peer here the personal involvement, as in, on a weekly basis, the calls or the texts or the emails I might get about people's personal lives, as in why they might not be able to do what they did because their parents are ill or because they're going through something tough or whatever there might be. You realize that everyone has a life outside of work as well. You know, I think getting back to my point is just that I don't think you can prepare for those things. I think if you care about the people though that work for you and you have trust and you have loyalty and you are and you realize that although everyone has to work very hard, that they have lives outside, then I think that you can come around it.
do you have a life outside?
No.
No.
No, I have a lot of fun, but I'd say most of my life is
Dedicated.
yeah, it's about what we do. But, you know, I work with amazing people. I have a lot of great friends that do similar things. And, you know, I think it's about sacrifices. It's about sometimes, you know, not going out the weekend because you know that you've got to work all week and you can't do it very often. Maybe when you're in Paris during Fashion Week, it's a different story. But you know, you can't go out a lot because you might have to work during the week. And just because sometimes, you know, if I'm honest, you work so late during the week that sometimes a Saturday and Sunday I'm just in bed pretty much and catching up on emails. But it's fun, and I don't think that you know, and I'm there's probably a lot of people that could do what I do because they've got more experience or they're smarter or whatever else. So I think if you're aware of that, and I think every entrepreneur has a slight feeling of being a fraud and that sort of stuff. So I think because of that, it means that at the weekends I'm sort of trying to learn, or I'm trying to read more articles, or I'm trying to get better at what I failed at that week. It's because I understand that I'm fortunate to be in the position I'm in, and on the flip side to that, to stay in that position, I've got to keep moving forward.
For you, an entrepreneur is someone who's been through business without knowing that he was doing business?
To me, I was never doing business, I was having fun. And all I wanted to do whenever I played a game, instead of playing like, I don't know, mums and dads or whatever other people played, I was like, let's play running a shop, or let's play this, or let's walk the neighbour's dogs. And whatever it was, the next day I just wanted to make it a little bit bigger, a little bit better, and most of the time get more people involved. And that was as simple as it was, just bigger, better, more people, and have fun. And I think because I never saw it as business, it just sort of, you learn, you fail, and it just sort of happened. But an entrepreneur to me is anyone who has a thought which becomes an idea, and they have the guts, the determination to make that idea happen, whether it succeeds or fails. And I think there's a lot of people, every single person thinks about random things every day. There's few people that think about things and then plan or decide that they're going to act upon them. And I think that's when an idea happens. And then there's even fewer people that have an idea and go, actually, I'm just going to do it. And what we try and do at Appear here is help those people that have the ideas make it happen. And to me, anyone can be an entrepreneur. Everyone is an entrepreneur. Some people decide to act upon those ideas.
Do you choose your friends as entrepreneurs? You need to be surrounded by people like you. If you think about your friends today, would you say like they are all, even it's not about being successful or not, it's about being this mindset?
Yes and no. I've got a lot of friends that are entrepreneurs. I've got a lot of friends that are artists, that are fashion designers, that work in other companies. A lot of my friends work in fashion houses or different places, and they've got jobs, so they're not the entrepreneur, but they're creative, they're driven, they are incredibly smart. I've got other friends who, are teachers or estate agents or whatever they might be. And to me, what I look for is people who have an excitement for life. And what I want to do when I'm done with working, and I get to surround myself with great people at work and great mentors and advisors and investors, that actually when I'm with my friends, I want people who just are excited, who just love life, who get excited, who contribute and who have fun. And that might be someone who's a PE teacher, it might be someone who's an artist, it might be someone who's a fashion designer. But I love having friends that are a little bit of everything. I think life would be a bit sad if my friends were just entrepreneurs. And entrepreneurs are annoying.
Yeah, you think so?
They can be, especially at dinner. There's too many opinions of where everyone wants to go.
It's interesting, this point. You need to be refreshed by other passion than just entrepreneurship.
Of course, but also entrepreneurship's amazing in one sense, but also if you are the creative director or you're running marketing or you're doing events or you're doing something within a business, you still have thoughts, you still have ideas, you still have things that you act upon that you make happen. And what I get frustrated by is people that get so excited about being an entrepreneur that everyone wants to be an entrepreneur. And then you've got incredibly talented people that would, if they were part of your team or you were working together, would be amazing. But they sort of go off and they do their own thing that's sort of okay, but not that good because they want to work for themselves or whatever. And I think that actually somebody who works in a business, who's creative, who's passionate, who's driven, is as entrepreneurial, if not sometimes more entrepreneurial than the guy who's running their own company.
I get it. It's like the ego thing is something.
Yeah, so I'm friends with people who don't have egos and who are driven and passionate and excited by life, and that means that sometimes they're entrepreneurs and sometimes they're not. But they've got to be passionate, and they've got to have fun, and they've got to be they've just got to have something that's, they've got to, I want to surround myself with people that just want to do something. They don't just let life.
Yeah. They are not on statu quo. They want to move things.
Yeah.
About Paris, you want to talk about Paris? How, because it's brand new. I mean, it's like leaving your. You're not leaving. You're staying in the UK, but it's a brand new adventure. It's like starting from scratch. And here on this platform, I'm really focusing on this: how hard it is to scale a model in Europe. Going countries by countries, and. How do you tackle? How do you see it? Like you're coming, you're spending some time meeting some people, trying to convince landlord first. How do you do? If you can talk about it, from London to Paris.
So I've been coming out here every 4 or 5 weeks, meeting with landlords, convincing them, and it's been incredibly exciting. And like you said, it is just the first step. And I think what you find is that the technology and the idea and all those things, that fundamentally the exact same issues, the exact same inefficiencies in the market in London are the same inefficiencies in Paris and are the same inefficiencies in Marrakesh or Miami or any city in the world, right? And that's what's exciting about what we're doing up here. I think what you learn is just how different people are and the cultural differences, and how do you make sure that the guys you hire in Paris are as driven and as excited by what you do as the guys in London. And I want to get off the train in Paris and feel that I've turned up in an office which is the same as my office in London. So that can be difficult. But, nothing to me is... There's nothing that's terrifying. It's just, how do we make sure that we build an incredible culture in a city that, in Paris we're lucky it's only a few hours away, but how do you build that incredible culture in a building, in a room with people that aren't in your headquarters? And that's something that we've got to solve, and that's something that I'm always thinking about. And that's, I think once you've nailed that, that's what means that you can really start to replicate your model internationally. Because I think the other bits are sort of simple.
Who do you recruit? What type of people? What are you checking in terms of mindset? Not skills.
Well, look, I didn't go to university and I didn't go to college, so I'm naturally somebody who looks for people that have things additional to just their skill, as in what they are on paper. We judge people on 3 things. One is skill, one is culture, and one is approach. And we judge each of those things out of 4. 4's the best you've ever seen, 1's the worst. And every single person who comes for an interview gets interviewed by 3 different people: their line manager, the person on their team, and myself. And each of those people focus on one of those 3, but they score them out of all 3. So I'm very focused. Every single person who joins the company, I have a quick interview on culture. Who are they? What drives them? What excites them? Why do they get up in the morning? Do they have the same values as we have? And yeah, I think out of all 3 of those things, skill, approach, and culture is the most important. And to me, that just is what gets them up in the morning. How do they go about solving problems, and what do they value in their life, work, and personally?
So what would be your values at Appear Here and yours?
We say no bullshit. So we hate politics. I don't like people that are political or aren't upfront. We just want people that sort of say it how it is and have a tough skin to get on with it. On the flip side, I think we're incredibly caring. So we want people that don't just get driven by making money, they get driven by making a difference. And, we're not making it easier for someone to buy a jumper online. We're actually, helping people make their ideas happen, and we're actually helping make cities more interesting. And to me, that's so much more powerful than just, going on a site to find out a cool nightclub that's opening.
It's not transactional.
Trust, loyalty, people that really want to produce stuff that's wow, not just okay. So when you meet people and everything about them when they talk to you is like that they have this, they strive to just be better. I think that's what we look for.
But would you have like kind of a lifestyle, for instance? People can come at any hour. You use what type of tools together to so that everybody is still informed and this kind of stuff. Do you have things on this point? Or?
Yeah. So I mean, I'm personally not massively strict on like time. But I know in the company, though, I think the culture has become that, you know, pretty much everyone's in the office before 9. Everyone works very hard. A lot of people are in the office till very late. But there's also this culture that, I guess there's a couple of things. If you work late but you've got nothing to do, nobody's going to think that that's a good thing. So, you know, the people that work very late are doing an amazing amount of stuff. Secondly, we have an amazing amount of fun in the office. So sometimes I sort of say to the guys, if we had less fun, you could leave earlier. You know, it's sort of like all of our faults that there's sort of this culture where there's an amazing energy and everyone's very focused on what they're doing, but there's also a lot of practical jokes and a lot of fun things happening, which I think mean that, you know, we could probably leave sometimes at 7 or 8, but we leave at 9 or 10 because of that stuff. But it makes the office more fun. What else?
Do you go on holidays together, for instance, sometime?
We all have a holiday as a team once a year. Every single day at 9, every team has a stand-up where they talk about what's going on. The whole company works in sprints. So everyone has things that they want to achieve within the next 2 weeks, or problems or proof points that they want to solve. So like the technology team, we all work on those sprints. And then we do 100-day sprints as well, where we say in 100 days' time, we're going to have done X, Y, or Z. And we put an unmovable deadline. And we do that to keep the same momentum, the same energy, and the same, I guess, fear of being against the clock as right at the beginning when you've only got 100 days until you're going to run out of money.
Teaching Balderton, for instance, do you have any stories like how easy was it or not, and you know, how did you adapt?
So, I think if you're pitching to people, and I've made a few angel investments like myself. I mean, it's not something that I'm focused on. It's not something that I really want to do, but the reason I mention it is when you meet someone who's incredibly passionate, who has something that they're excited by, and then on top of that, they tell you they're going to make it happen, it's very hard not to believe them. So to me, I don't have much to say on pitching, but all I can say is if you genuinely are passionate and you genuinely believe you can do it, I think other people will get as excited as you. And a couple of times when I've got involved in other startups, it's because you meet someone and they're so passionate about what they're doing. They've got such an energy, an amazing energy, that you sort of thrive off of it and you get energized by speaking from them. And you sort of look at them and go, do you know what? I think you just might do it. And I think it's that simple. I think, you know, if you're not an idiot, hopefully you're a bit smart. But to me, it's that you're passionate and that you believe you can do it. I think if you've got those two things, you'll convince other people.
And when you went to see some investors, you already have proven your model, right?
A little bit. I mean, not at the beginning. I mean, I probably met like 30 people that all said no before I met one that said yes. Yeah, it was very tough.
Okay. But you had
But it was just me with like an iPad. I mean, I was an idiot. I mean, I was like 19 or 20 going out, trying to like convince people. And like, I'd not gone to college, I'd not gone to university, I didn't have anything proven. And then, you know, those failures and those people saying no, and, you know, it's judging the ones that really mean no and judging the ones that, you know, I think what I learned is that most people are nice. Most people are polite, so nobody really ever says no. What they say is,
let's meet
again, or, oh, if you get a bit of traction, or if you do this. And I think the truth is, if somebody comes in to meet you today for an interview, And I always say this to the guys on the team. I'm like, if somebody comes in to meet you for an interview and you think that they're terrible, you very rarely say you were terrible. Probably never. What you do is you go, so lovely to meet you. Thank you so much for your time. I'll be in touch. And the problem is that most people are like that, and VCs are, that when you meet them, they'll be like, oh my God, that was amazing. Maybe you need a bit more traction, or maybe you need this, or oh, you're just a little bit too big for us, or you're just a little bit too small. And I think most of the time people are just polite, and what they're really saying is, I'm just not interested.
But you kept the face, and you find one.
It was an obstacle, and I think going back to my original point, you know, if you're trying to get somewhere, you're going to be hit by things, and if you're not arrogant in the sense that you think you've always got something to learn, then every rejection and every obstacle is the opportunity to get better.
And what did you change and twist to convince this guy?
Every time, different. I mean, little things. I mean, in terms of there would be people that just didn't believe in it. There'd be people that questioned every part of the model, and I didn't change that. I believed what we were going to do, and no matter what different people said, I stayed focused on that. But it might be that somebody said, well, you know, do you really think you're going to be able to prove that a big landlord can sign this up? You know, you don't know anyone in real estate, you're very young, And then I went out and I'd go, okay, well, for the next meeting, I'm going to have got X amount of meetings with big landlords. I'm going to have got a letter of intent, or I'm going to have done something so that when the guy goes to me in the meeting, Ross, you know, are you going to be able to convince the landlord? You can go, well, actually, look. Or if somebody goes, well, no, the landlords aren't going to do payments online, or they're not going to do this, how do you just convince one so that when they say that, you can go, well, look. And then suddenly, if you've got an idea, you've got the passion, you believe you can do it, and you've proven that you've convinced other people, whether that's people joining your team, whether it's customers, to also believe in this same ideal, I think that's the piece where you really want to back someone and you want to be involved. It's when you believe that this crazy person or this crazy idea exists, and that person is also able to convince other people that that idea could be true.
You convinced some angels, and you didn't have any platform because you didn't have any tech people with you.
Yeah.
So can you talk about this bootstrapping period of time?
Yeah, so I guess what I'd done is once we got cash, and actually before we'd got the cash, is I went out and I started to try and just do it. So before we had a platform and before we had any investment, I went and I convinced a friend to rent a space, and I convinced a landlord to give me a space, and I did it on the phone, and I just sort of hustled. And then it happened. And then when we got the site live, you know, we had the initial site live, which was just sort of a holding site, and all the brands would come through. And I remember every morning we'd write the brands on a list, and we'd write any landlords on a list, and we'd see if any matched up. You know, I mean, we'd actually do. And the point there was that from day dot, from the moment that we sort of had the idea, we were making revenue, but we were also doing bookings. And that wasn't because we had any technology or because we were ready. It was because we just were hustling, and we understood that there was always something we could learn. And there's pros and cons to that, but my feeling is the moment, as an entrepreneur as well, is that you might have this idea, you might believe in it, but you sort of need to do the hustling bit and have people, whether it's online, offline, whatever, just doing the bookings with you to convince yourself that this is actually, you're not crazy. You know what I mean?
Totally. Being a hustler surrounded in an environment where not everybody is a hustler, I'm not talking about your team, but I'm talking about the environment in general. How do you keep this kind of optimism, faith?
I guess, to me, you just simply want to be learning more and getting better, and as long as you feel, whether you failed or succeeded, you feel that you're learning something and that you're ending the week in a better position than you were before. And that doesn't mean higher or lower from a business perspective. I mean, on a personal perspective, then I think that you get enough energy and momentum to keep going.